All right, folks, we are live again with another AMA. Welcome, welcome. I'm a little low today. Let's see if I can adjust this a little bit. There we go. I'm going to share. Let's go a little bit lower. I have a bit of a strange rake here today. Well, that'll do just fine. Maybe not. Still got to get that angle right. There we go. Perfect. Yeah, another AMA. June 1st, Alex O'Connor versus Dinesh D'Souza. We are ramping up to that final push in our marketing for the event. Hope that it's a successful event. I'm going to share this stream with Discord right now. So let's get this going. How's everyone doing? Say hello when you get into the chat. Remember to smash that like button. June 1st is creeping up on us. Come ask me some mind-bending questions. I am live. If you guys haven't joined our Discord server yet, please do join it. It's a lot of fun. It's a great community. If you feel like you lack a sense of community in your life, like you mostly just have like the outlet of your family and your friends, I really believe that in order to, live a life that is thriving from a well-being perspective, a social ape like us, a social human, needs to have a community. And you can get that digitally online through the Pangburn community. It's a place where you can sit down and have conversations with people from all around the world with different beliefs. And the cool thing about the Pangburn community is that it is governed by the laws of good faith and helpfulness. So in a lot of online communities, they won't have rules like that. So you'll constantly be met with like insincere people who are just trolling, trying to mess with you, and people who just are putting in no effort to be helpful. That's not allowed in the Penguin community. We police that very closely. So if you are someone that's looking for, by good faith, I mean sincerity of intentions, people who are sincere about wanting to have a good conversation, and people who are going to be helpful throughout that process, then the Penguin community is for you. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be passionate. It is a very passionate, like people get very passionate and charged up about these ideas, but they maintain their good faithness and their helpfulness through that process. Feel free to ask me anything in the comment section. I'm fine addressing anything, answering any questions, asking me any philosophical questions. I'm all game for that. Ultimately, right now at Pangburn, we are promoting our next big event between Dinesh D'Souza and Alex O'Connor. This will be a live discussion on stage in New York City, June 1st. It's going to be freely available to you guys on this channel. I've kind of made that a mandate whenever it's possible for me. All of our future live discussions will be freely available for you guys. So because of that, if there is any way that you can support us in any way, that is amazing. Even being here for these live streams, being there for the live stream on June 1st supports us, because you're helping out in the YouTube algorithm to help more people get involved in what we do at Pangburn. And simply sharing information about the events is a big help to us as well. So if you're in New York City, if you're in the New York City area, you can't make it to the event, hopefully you can, but if you can't make it to the event, please do share on your social media. That does help everything a lot. Chip says, first question of the day, why are you not shaving and looking like you're living on the streets? Oh, come on. Let's get a couple votes in there. Do I look like I'm living on the streets? Maybe I am. No, but I have been eating a lot of spaghetti because this is a very expensive event coming up. It's not cheap to promote these events. Anyone who's ever tried it. Actually, let's do a bit of a poll from the audience. how much money do you think it costs to put on this next event? We're in New York City. We got Dinesh D'Souza, Alex O'Connor, head-to-head on stage, live audience. We're in an auditorium. I'll give you guys a bit of a hint. We're in an auditorium that can sit 500 people. Let's get your votes in. How much money do you think this event costs? The reason why I'm asking this is a lot of people do not realize the amount of money it costs to put on events like this, how big these investments are. For example, I put out a poll question asking the YouTube community how much money it costs to put on, and let's say give your answers in US dollars, considering this is a US event. How much money it costs to put on the 4 Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson events that are our biggest attraction on this channel. Actually, maybe not anymore, because the Peterson Dillahunty one is catching traction. So, but yeah, let me know how much you guys think this next event costs to put on, and then we can get into like where the majority of the money goes. Okay, we're getting some pretty good guesses actually. This is awesome. Abdikal Regai says, I love your content. Keep it up. Thank you, brother or sister. Appreciate that. Thanks for being here. Guys, there's 63 of you in the room. If all of you guys just quickly for 2 seconds just tap that like button, this live stream will go crazy and it will really help the event and of course future events. So if you could take 1 second to smash that like button, let's see what we can do to stick the middle finger to the YouTube algorithm right now. Because honestly, YouTube has never been a big fan of Pangburn. One of the reasons is because I like have Jordan Peterson in my videos and some other people that the YouTube algorithm really has, I would say, been. I think it's a bit better now, but it's been kind of they deter you from posting those kinds of videos. I feel like I think I have enough evidence to suggest that when I post something with Jordan Peterson in the title, there seems to be it seems to be impossible to get that green thumbs up for monetizing the video. Let's see. Chip has got some good digs in here. Let's see if he's improved. You've been released from the homosexual jailhouse. I mean, I don't think such a thing exists, but guys, what do you guys think? Is Chip right? Is there a homosexual jailhouse? And if so, I mean, I wouldn't be against visiting it. I mean, I would do it for research purposes, because my wife would be like, "Why are you going to the homosexual jailhouse?" And maybe I'd be like, "I'm going to hang out with some buddies or whatever," and she'd be like, "Yeah, cool, awesome." Red Betty says, "Hi from Canada. I'm visiting your channel for the first time. Are you depressed about the future?" Absolutely not. Canada is a beautiful place. I love Canada. I actually am not. I'm not too opposed to how Justin Trudeau has, governed over the past, 12 years. I think the fact that he has kept the majority, right, means that I think democracy is playing out. I don't like Justin Trudeau, like from a pure personality perspective. I think he's a little petty, and he tends to focus on a lot of petty issues with regards to his own personal interests, like issues of like language usage and things like this are a big deal to him. But I think he is maintain the democracy of this country. And I know some people will disagree with me on that. They'll be like, "Oh, he's anti-free speech. You can't say anything in Canada anymore." Well, I say everything I want in Canada, and I'm a heavy critic of Islam and Mohammed, and I've never been contacted by the Canadian government or by the police telling me that I can't have my free speech. And so I don't know. Okay, it looks like we got some guesses in here. The question today is, how much money do you think it costs to produce the next Pangburn event on June 1st in New York City between Alex O'Connor and Dinesh D'Souza? They are talking about, is the Bible true? What do you guys think? Do you guys think the Bible is true? We got some guesses in 30K, 75K, 58K. Sean says, AI is like fire because it depends on what you build with it, whether it is dangerous or powerful, life-changing. Do you think philosophers will lead a conversation among the voting population about the future of AI we want to build? Well, I don't. I mean, of course, philosophers are going to weigh in on this discussion. It's a great philosophical question, the rightness and wrongness when we get into ethics of how we should treat AI, not just for our sakes, but for the sake of the AI entity that's coming into existence. This starts getting interesting. It's like at what point do we feel as though we are enslaving another living being that essentially has the same capacity that we have for experience? And will they have an experience? These are very interesting questions. So, you know, the powers should listen to the conversations that are happening in intellectualism, in the intellectual community, and the conversations that are happening in the scientific community, of course, to understand the implications. But I don't fear AI. I fear AI as much as I fear the internet, which is very little. I kind of I take the more Steven Pinker approach to the AI discussion as opposed to the Sam Harris, Elon Musk approach. I think any of the stuff that we engineer is going to be as deletable as anything, on the internet. Now, we all know that it's not easy to wipe the internet of anything, right? And the fact that it can be re-uploaded and whatnot. So yes, there are those problems, but I'm not worried about AI like a lot of people are. Carola says, I have a feeling D'Souza is tying to be expensive. The church people usually are. Chip says, here's a drag queen. Yeah, I'm fine with you calling me a drag queen. That's cool. I'm I have nothing against drag queens. I think drag queens are fantastic people. I've known many drag queens through the theater industry and through dance. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with drag queens. They're people just like you and I, Chip. Red Betty says, I ask because I remember politics being so desperate. I'm 61 and I, despite feeling so remorse about the future. Yeah, I mean, I personally think that things are just getting better with regards to public intellectual discourse. People are letting their guard down more, speaking more truthfully, I would say, publicly, not so towing the line of their let's say their audience or their political affiliation. I see more of that happening. There's still, I still think there's a lot of progress to be made there, but but I just look out in the world and I see a lot of positive progress in intellectual discourse, and I think that is where we're going to find the grounding of a healthy society, when people are communicating and having good conversations as opposed to not communicating and having bad conversations when they do. So I do see a lot of good conversations happening. Red Betty says, I'm speaking of these folks you shine a light on, Jordan Peterson, etc. Yeah, I mean, I disagree a lot with Jordan Peterson's political takes. I honestly think a lot of his political takes are irrational to his own purposes. I won't get into that right now, but maybe I'll do a video on that, and I can outline specific examples of what I mean. But picking through a philosopher or a person who's engaging in suffering avoidance calculus is a great feat, and it takes a lot of work and being very specific with arguments and language. Adekel Reggae, should I donate you 100 pounds? Oh, no, don't. That's too much money. Don't. Depending on who you are, right? Of course, at Pangburn, we want to see donations coming in. We want to see support for the events, but I never want anyone to, during a live stream like this, or unless they're coming to an event, buy a ticket. But I would never want someone to throw much more than a cup of coffee towards a live stream like this, or towards a certain cause if you're not going to be there for the event. So, ultimately my feelings towards you are that I want your well-being to flourish, and I'm sure that you can do more with that $100 for yourself in your life, for yourself or those around you, for your well-being, than throwing something our way. But if you do throw something our way, it's always appreciated. Carolus says the Bible is not Bible's message throughout the glasses of philosophers. Yes, I think. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think you're responding to whether or not the Bible is true. Yeah. I mean, the Bible. I think the Bible is like it's a collection of myths, and I think some of these characters might be true. The person Jesus Christ may have in fact walked the earth and may have been a true political figure like Muhammad, and I say political because it would kind of make sense of what you would see today if someone was to come out and start saying like what they're saying. They would probably be considered a political figure. Like you could look at like Greta Thunberg, right? Or I think that's how you pronounce her last name. It's like, is she a religious figure, a political figure, or what? You know. So, but you know, Jesus obviously in the New Testament talked a lot about, you know, or at least didn't correct others when referenced as God or the Son of God, right? Sean Walton says, do you think AI can be contained within national borders with laws that AI entities must follow and allow humans to move to the country that offers the lifestyle the AI offers there? Okay, very interesting question. But I'm going to go back to the internet. So I would give the same answer for the internet. So do you think the internet can be contained within national borders and laws that AI? Well, we will try. Some stuff will slip through, but we're going to set up regulations so that we can, you know, protect against anything that's unlawful. And then if there's things that are unlawful that we think should be lawful, then there's going to be new legislation. But, you know, how old am I? I'm 36. Red Betty says, I appreciate your positive approach. This is a great channel. I will subscribe. Thank you very much, Red Betty. Okay, cool. I'm going to, I love Carolos's comment, Canada for president. Well, you guys write some more questions down. Yeah, you can ask questions about my personal life, anything you want, anything you might be of interest, don't hold back. I just am going to check something quickly here. I'm actually going to post this AMA on Twitter. Yeah, if you guys are on X, feel free to follow me. I'm at the Pangburn on X. Ask me anything. Boom. Okay, we'll post that. I'll also post it on our Facebook community page. We do have a big Facebook community page as well that has like 60,000 members or something along those lines. Awesome. All right. All right, just invited a few more people. When you get into the room, if you drop a like, I really, really appreciate it. We'll get back to your questions now. Really appreciate your channel. How old are you? I'm 36, already answered that. Thoughts on ethical emotivism? Well, I mean, I think ethics are just fundamentally sentimental. So I think all of our ethical attitudes, all of our moral attitudes are born of our sentiments, including whether or not we assess the Bible, for example, to be to have right or wrong answers to ethical questions. I think ultimately that's going through our own sentimental systems that's going to come into contact with our empathy drive and everything like that. So I do think that is the case. And yeah, so I hold a positive belief in that, and I claim to know that I know that all of your moral attitudes, you adopt those moral attitudes because you feel as though they are right. You feel it. You feel as though what Jesus had to say was right. You feel as though you wouldn't adopt it, you wouldn't accept it if you didn't feel it was right. Now, some might say, well, I don't make those individual judgments. I just put my faith in that what is said in this scripture or whatever is going to be correct. So I got to make that work. So through the faith, you are accepting it to be right. So whichever way you go about that. People have always had good conversations. It has never stopped the fanatics from making history. Yeah, that's a good point. That there can be times in history where good conversations are happening and radicals get control. But I would say that had there been platforms afforded to the ideas that the people coming into power detest, let's say I'm not going to say the word because YouTube will take away the monetization for this video, but in Germany, I think if the oppositions were allowed to speak publicly, even though a lot of people hated the opposition and didn't want to hear their attitudes and engage in intellectual discourse, I think there would have been more resistance within the country to what was going on and what was being proposed. So when free and open intellectual discourse and expression dies, it tends to pave the way for totalitarianism and all of these things that are detestable by almost everyone. And not to say that totalitarianism will necessarily result in the worst kind of thing you can imagine, but it seems to be the worst kind of thing you could imagine for at least some people in every case. And I think, anything totalitarian is just somewhat anti-fallibilistic. Even to be totalitarian about being fallibilistic is wrong in my assessment. Thoughts on the Alabama personhood legislation or personhood itself when we go from fetus to a person? Well, very good question. I would say correspondingly, there's no answer to that. So I'm going to reference the criteria of truth correspondence, which basically is about trying to learn more and map the objects in reality and what they do. So the object in question would be the fetus, and when we decide it is a person. Now, ultimately, this is going to be deemed so by the conceptualizer. And what I mean by that is I don't think there is an answer in objective reality that's going to be able to tell us, oh, there it is, the person is now. That's going to be deemed so by the conceptualizer. So all of us as thinking beings, all of us with our own attitudes, moral attitudes, whatever, attitudes of coherence, right? This is another criteria of truth. We're going to look at this entity and we're all going to have different attitudes of, no, there's the line. No, that's the line. Well, ultimately, this is going to be deemed so by the conceptualizer. That's what I mean by that. It's like, it's kind of the same thing like art. Someone will say, that's not art. And then the next guy, conceptualizer, will come by and say, yeah, it is. I consider it art. We have many competing ideas that can be applied to that example. So for me right now, the way I assess right or wrong or good or bad is based on well-being outcome, a well-being calculus. Well-being meaning wellness of body and mind. So when I look at the issue of abortion, I think about the fetus as a potential human. I don't think of it as like, or a potential person, we could say, because someone brought up personhood. I look at it as a potential person, which means a lot. It shouldn't be, a potential person is still something. And for me, a potential person is me. A potential person is you. Okay, it's potential. It's not me, but it's potentially me. It's potentially you. That's the way I think about it. And for those of you who don't know, I am a fallibilist. I'm willing to change my mind about all of my positions. It just takes, for me, I have to engage in the dialectic and hear some strong arguments that make sense to me, and I'll adopt new positions. So anything I say is not dogmatic in that I believe anything to be incontrovertibly true. I think everything is controvertibly true that I believe to be true. So currently right now, I like how Canada functions with this. Basically around the 24-week mark, when pain neurons start developing and are able to fire, that's when we put the hard cutoff there. I talked about this in the last stream where I've gone through this exercise of trying to imagine being a female. I'm not going to say woman, because then we're going to get into a different discussion about the updating of labels and what is a woman. We can talk about that. I have my answers to that too. But I try to imagine being a female who has become pregnant and questioning whether or not I want to go through with this, whether or not this is the right decision. I imagine myself giving due seriousness, treating this seriously. And one of the things that has informed that to help me imagine it in that way is that I've spoken to a lot of females about this, and they've told me that, not all of them, but I've heard from many that have said that I wish I would have known more, or I wish I would have taken more time or read more, researched more, not just gone with what I felt strongly about while recognizing that I didn't have all the information at the time. So it's a very complicated process of like what it means to put your body through all this, what it means to be, if you're going to put a baby up for adoption, what it means to be separated from the baby, all of this stuff. And I think these are all valid considerations. And I know that's hard to hear for someone who might be of the Christian faith, who believes that like upon conception, that is a baby, just like a baby that's been born. I just don't feel that way at this point. Like we were just talking about how our sentiments inform our our moral attitudes. And I would say our sentiments inform everything. My epistemological standards, everything are based on my feelings. Why do I adopt correspondence and the scientific method as my key ways of understanding and knowing objective reality? Because I feel that way. Ultimately, it feels the most correct to me. And it doesn't feel the most correct to the other guy down the street. So, everyone who thinks that they have escaped their feelings with regards to epistemology or moral attitudes and things like this, I'm sorry, you haven't. Or if they put their faith in God or something like that, or faith in the Bible or wherever they put their faith, you haven't. You put your faith there because it felt right to put your faith there. That's what's going on. Is it possible I'm wrong about that? Of course, I'm a fallibilist. I could be wrong about anything I say. Let's see. Yeah, there's an eclipse coming up, folks. M. Ladd says, okay, this is a fun question. This was actually explored in an event I produced featuring Sam Harris, Matt Dillahunty, and Richard Dawkins that we held in Vancouver. And the question of incest. Now I've definitely lost monetization for this video, but whatever. What M. Ladd says, what makes incest immoral? Oh, but not homosexuality. Oh, okay. First of all, I don't think I have because let's look at this. The thing that matters to me is well-being outcome. So wellness of body and mind. Is there anything in homosexuality necessarily that causes a detriment to wellness of body and mind? All of the best models we have in neuroscience, clinical psychology, everything that informs medicine says no. There's nothing inherent about homosexuality that causes a detriment to your wellness of body and mind. And I would also add that there has been measured detriments to people who try to stifle their homosexuality. So I would say if you are homosexual, please feel free to live as your homosexual self. And if the current place you live in doesn't allow you to do that, I would suggest seeking different lands to dwell in. And then how does this relate to incest? Now, again, my calculus is going to be the well-being outcome. Is anything within this incestual relationship causing a detriment to the well-being of anyone involved? Now, in many, many, many cases we see of incest, the answer is yes. Why? Because often one person has some kind of familial power over the other person, in that they look up to them as the person that tells them right from wrong because they happen to be related and they grew up together, or it's the father and daughter or something like this. There often is a situation where there is a power dynamic that is set up in such a way that the person in the position of power could essentially control the other individual because of their familial connection. That has proven, I would say, to be detrimental to the individual who is essentially enslaved in this familial way. But in saying that, is it possible for there to be an incestual relationship that has no detriment to individuals' well-being? I would say yes. You could paint a possible scenario where that is the case. Do I think it's likely? No, I don't. But I think it's possible for there to be incestual relationships that do not cause a detriment to the well-being of the individuals involved. But I think in almost all cases, that's not the case. So anyone who's thinking about this or thinking about engaging in such things, please research this heavily about the things you might not realize that are involved in such a relationship that are different than a non-familial, non-incestual relationship. I'm not familiar with Clash of Civilians, Sean. Let's see. Do you think that Huntington's Clash of Civilians suggests that a multipolar system can cause a balance between cultural spheres? If so, do you think philosophy will lead a conversation in the media? Sorry, excuse me. I'm drinking coffee and it usually makes me burp a little bit. Suggests that a multipolar system can cause balance between cultural spheres. Oh, okay. Like you have two polarized ends of the political spectrum, and that's causing a cultural balance, kind of like two vibrating electrons causing this neutrality in the middle or something like that. I don't think it's necessary, but that can be the outcome. If the answer is can cause a balance, like, is that possible? Yeah, sure. Putcher says, is it bad to edge to LeBron James? Only if you're not edging to Michael Jordan at the same time. I heard Peterson won't debate Dillahunty. Why is that? Well, I mean, Jordan, I've emailed Jordan on multiple occasions about this, and his responses have been short and quite definite that he's not interested, and no. He hasn't given me a reason. There's been a lot of speculation online, I think it would be good for Jordan to do a second round with Matt Dillahunty. I will say, actually, I'm not going to get into particulars because there is some confidentiality agreements in emails exchanged and whatnot, not only between Jordan and I, but between Jordan's spicy new representatives and myself, where I have offered a ridiculous amount of money to make this happen, a round two between Jordan Peterson and Matt Dillahunty, and it was quickly turned away and shut down. So I don't know. I don't think it's a matter of money. I can say that. Jordan's got piles of money now. It might be different if Jordan didn't. So, I mean, saying that, maybe it is kind of a matter of money. But I do think there is something else. Maybe, just to speculate a little bit, maybe Jordan didn't feel that it was a good faith, helpful dialectic with Matt. And I would disagree. I think, I think that was, from a good faith, helpfulness perspective, I think that was one of Matt Dillahunty's best onstage performances. I would say, if anything, Jordan seemed uncomfortable to a level where it probably pushed him into some territories of unhelpfulness. I think Jordan's always sincere in what he's doing, so he gets full grades for good faithness. But I think at moments Jordan was maybe unhelpful at sometimes during that discussion. But that's okay. We all get that way sometimes. Sean Walton says, if the voting population understands that a multipolar system of morality exists that is divided along lines of culture, that they can pick and choose to have their spheres overlap with others. Can you rephrase that? There's something in the language that's not making sense. Kenneth, what was your comment about Jesus? I didn't see anything. You said, why was my comment about Jesus ghosted here? You guys have to understand that YouTube sometimes, depending on the words you use or the phrasing you use, sometimes for whatever reason might delete your comment. I don't like that about YouTube. It happens under the comment sections of our videos as well. People are always saying, my comment's been deleted, my comment's been deleted, my comment's been deleted. And I don't know why YouTube chooses to delete some comments and not others. I used to think I knew, but then I saw people getting away with things that, but I think people report comments. That's one of the things. Like, people will report specific comments. And, that's just the way it works. And then I think if the comment's reported enough, I'm not sure if it's always going to go to a human to review it, because that seems like they would be getting millions per minute, right? So I imagine there is some kind of system there. I just don't understand it. Sean says, if there are several moral models possible for the future of humanity, then do you think that philosophy will lead a conversation in the media about the options available to choose by consensus? Well, I already think that we do polling to assess people's moral attitudes on certain issues regarding right or wrong or bad or good. So I think we kind of engage the public on those conversations. And I think there are several moral models on offer. My moral model, of course, is what I outline in my moral quest, to maximize well-being for myself and those around me. And that those around me circle, I try to stretch as far as I can in my life. But I think that people, if they adopted simply that in their life, regardless of what their other religious attitudes are or whatever, if we did focus on well-being in that way as individuals, this would be a much better place to live. Rodolfo says, could you please dance around? Nah, I'm good. Maybe you could take off your shirt. You're all man. Seriously. Kareem says, follow Jesus. Well, it depends on what part of Jesus you're talking about? Can you be specific? What are some things that Jesus said that you appreciate? I hope you let us know, Kareem. You said Jesus loves you. How do you know that? Daily Breakfast says, is war necessary? Sometimes. Every moral quest and every moral system must have in it a call to war. What would happen if if something did happen? War would be necessary at that point. For me, if there is enough well-being detriment in a particular instance, and diplomatic pursuits have all broken down, there's no lines of communication anymore, and people are getting, there are powers out there that are just simply targeting people for whatever political reason and acting antithetically towards their well-being, then these are calls to war, causes to war for myself. So, that's an important thing for any moral actor to understand and you can think about in your own individual life as well, like what would be a cause to war for you as an individual, and what steps would you go about to fight this war? As individuals, we have different ways of going about this. We have the war of ideas, which is what I wish we did geopolitically and as individuals. This should be, a war of ideas, meaning like engaging in the dialectic should be, a first step. And from there, we have legal routes. There, of course, are the horrible last result physical war that is always something that just ends in tragedy any way you slice it, which no one ever wants to see. So yeah, there should be a call to war, and you should have a good understanding of what would constitute a call to arms or a call to war in your moral framework. Interesting. Kareem says, I put my faith there, he's referring to Jesus, because I realized my nature is wrong. So you made an assessment about your own nature for being wrong, and this all came through your sentiments, your feelings. You felt as though your nature was wrong, and you felt as though Jesus's nature was right, or a Christian theology was right. You decided. And your decisions are born of your sentiments. Sean says, do you think conversations arguing moral issues between different cultures can function to start with polarized conversation and elevate it towards models of morality, like understanding multipolar? Okay, arguing moral issues between different cultures is good. Yes, when you say, can this be the case? Yeah, I'm going to say, like any of this stuff that you say, can it start with polarized conversation? Sure. All of this stuff, when you say, can it, or is it possible for X? I'm going to say yes. Glospa Natural says, why Indians not take LGBTQ seriously, or they don't care? Yeah, I mean, not everywhere around the world has felt the same about the emergence or being confronted with the idea of homosexuality. Cultures throughout human history have treated this differently. So these movements of LGBTQ plus, like in some places in the West, there are movements because there's a feeling that there needs to be, because of the disenfranchised individuals that are engaged with these movements that feel like things have not been they have not been equally represented under the law of their land or by individuals in their community. So and in some cases targeted. So that's why cultural movements happen. I mean, the same thing people are saying about trans people now, like, you're going to let a trans person teach my children? They were saying the exact same thing about homosexuals like 50 years ago, just literally yesterday. So, you know, we're not through the weeds on all of this bigotry and moral outrage towards people's nature, you know, and it's not to say, and I mean people's like nature in the sense of things that are acceptable under the current legislation, under the current law, that you know, are a part, just part of what makes someone who they are. Like, you know, some people will find it disgusting that people will dress up like drag queens and go dance like that, or go and read to children like that. But there's no, like, from what I've seen, and there might be a few fringe cases, but from what I've seen, it's just, you know, people dressing up and reading to kids just like any kind of entertainer might dress up as a role that they desire to play, or just being themselves. So I mean, I come from the theater world where none of this stuff is new or shocking at all, but when it starts getting mainstream attention, that's when people start freaking out about it and saying like, oh, this is, and usually it's just like something new that they're so afraid of that they don't understand, and they think that, you know, they've seen versions, let's say, of drag queens dancing in a sexual manner in an adult club or in a bar or something, and then they graft that experience onto the drag queen who's simply sitting there in their drag attire reading stories to children. Oh, they're trying to indoctrinate my children. They said the same thing about homosexuals reading to children. You know, so there's this like rinse and repeat nature of some people who are trying to conserve a certain image of what they want to see with regards to their children at school. But this is a wake-up call that people are different. People don't have to have the same visions of what is right and wrong to you. So long as you believe in democracy and they're following the laws of the land. Sure, you can fight against certain cultures emerging and say like, I don't like that culture, I want legislation to outlaw that culture. But can you really call yourself someone who loves democracy or a democratic republic when you say things like that? I don't think so. I think you want something more totalitarian. You know, and if you think that something is being done to harm your children, or, you know, bring the receipts to the table, you're going to have to demonstrate that. It's not going to be enough for you to say it's unchristian. Yeah, that's not going to do anything, because you do live in a democracy, depending on where you live, obviously. But yeah, it'll be their value versus your value, so long as it's if it's within the bounds of the law of the land. Luis says it absolutely compromises the healthy integrity of the relationship between close family members. Yeah, when you say absolutely compromises with regards to incest, I'm sure you can imagine a possible scenario, right? For example, let's try to think of a possible incestual example of where this might be okay, right? From purely from a well-being perspective. Let's say two individuals are blood brother. Let's say they're. Let's use this example because this was an example that was used in the Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, and Matt Dillahunty discussion. It's two sisters, two biological sisters that were separated at birth. They go on to live their normal lives. They don't know who they are. They happen to come into contact with each other, and they both happen to be gay, right? And they meet each other at a gay bar, and they fall in love, and they live together, you know, having a successful relationship until they're 90, and then all of a sudden, when they're 90, they get blood tests done, and they're like, "You're my long lost sister." Now, at that point, when we discover that, some people might cherry pick their lives and say, oh, see, that was the issue. But they didn't know the whole time that they were biological sisters, right? So I do think there are scenarios out there where this could happen. And I'm just talking about possible scenarios. That's why I wouldn't say it's absolutely the case that, like Louise said here, that this would compromise the health and integrity of the relationship between close family members. So I think we could paint scenarios where, and then I think we could paint many, many, many scenarios where this would be absolutely wrong from a well-being perspective. Panorama says, I guess he figured out your specifications and bad faith approaches to religious thoughts. You think, is that what you think the reason why Jordan won't do another discussion with Matt Dillahunty, because he figured out that I have bad faith approaches to religious thoughts? I mean, I would argue with you that I don't have bad faith relationship to religious thoughts. I engage and speak with many religious people and have long form, good faith, helpful discussions with them all throughout the year on our Discord server and publicly. So, I mean, I'm happy to hear your critiques specifically of where I am engaging in bad faith towards any religious ideas, but I work really hard to sincerely engage in a good faith, helpful conversation with anyone who holds any beliefs. So I would need to panorama here some specific examples. Yuri Davis says, are you an atheist? If you are, how do you definitively define morality? So yes, I'm an atheist, which just simply means I currently lack a belief in God or God's existence. And I'm fine defending the agnostic atheist position or the Gnostic atheist position. Just a quick rundown. Atheism and theism deals with what we claim to believe. Gnosticism and agnosticism deals with what we claim to know. So don't make the mistake of, when someone asks you if you're an atheist or not, don't make the mistake of saying, no, I'm an agnostic. It's a different question, okay? If you are agnostic to whether or not you know a God exists, you're almost certainly an atheist as well, which means you currently lack a belief in the existence of God. So if any of you claim to be agnostic, you are an atheist with regards to your belief. There's some very strange scenarios where you might not be, where you believe there is a God, but you don't know. It's like, if you believe there is, you're almost certainly going to know that there is. But anyways, so yes, I'm an atheist. I'm fine defending Gnostic atheism, which means I also know there are no gods. I know there are no gods as much as I know there are no fairies. So if you're to say, well, it's possible there are gods, I'm going to say, yes, it's possible there are gods. It's also possible that there are fairies, but possibility ought not weigh into our epistemological standards. It's just not practical. At that point, you're no longer playing in the realm of epistemology, in the realm of knowledge, in the way that you act in the world, right? You know, and this is the example I commonly use, you know your wife went to the grocery store. When she comes home with grocery bags, she told you she went to the grocery store, and she picked up your favorite items, and she told you all about it. You know that she went to the grocery store. Now you might say, it's possible she didn't. It's possible it's all a setup. Yeah, that's going to be the same thing you can say to any claim of knowledge on offer. So if that's the case, epistemic nihilism or epistemological nihilism is just simply refusing to play the game. It's like saying the best way to play hockey is to not play hockey. Ooh, like you're not playing the game, and it's not intellectually interesting or intellectually sound to say such a thing. It's actually a joke. So if you say the only thing I know is that I know nothing, that's a joke. That's just a joke. Hate to say it. So the rest of the question. So yeah, there's atheism and Gnosticism and agnosticism for you. Are you an atheist? Explain that. If you are, how do you definitively define morality? Now, I don't believe, I believe all morality is born of our sentiments, which means it's born of our feelings about our experience. So issues of right or wrong are based on how we feel about that proposition. So there is nothing definitive to be found there. It requires presuppositions to inform your moral outlook. So as an atheist, as someone who doesn't go to a holy book to try and get some kind of objective morality from this object of morality, or something that God's written on the rocks or something, I look to the realm of presuppositions that I'm willing to make about the world that seem self-evident, even though I cannot demonstrate them to be absolutely true. For example, here are my two. Number one, life is preferential to death. We all agree on this, right? Life is preferential to death. And I know people who are agnostic about that. They claim that they don't know if that's the case, but at least they haven't adopted death as preferential to life, or else they probably wouldn't be here much longer, right? So number one, life is preferential to death. That is something I believe. It's not written on a rock anywhere. It's not written in a holy book. Well, it is, but I don't believe in the validity of those, and we can get back to that later. But life is preferential to death. Why do I believe that? Well, it just feels right. I feel as though life is preferential to death. And I feel that most people of sound mind feel that way. So I think it's a reasonable presupposition. I feel very strongly that life is preferential to dying. Most people, that makes coherent sense. And then number two, health is preferential to sickness. For the very same reasons that life is preferential to death, health is preferential to sickness. We want to thrive to be well as opposed to thrive to be ill. So those two presuppositions inform my moral quest, which is to maximize well-being for myself and those around me. Why do I land on that? Why do I land on well-being as my moral calculus? Well, if I want to live instead of die, and be healthy instead of sick, what is going to give me my best chance of doing those things? What's going to give me my best chance is better understanding the objects that are involved in those presuppositions. Life is preferential to death is going to consider the wellness of my body and wellness of my mind. Health instead of sickness is going to consider the wellness of my body and wellness of my mind. And where do we study the wellness of our body and the wellness of our mind to better understand how it all functions? In medical science, in the biological sciences, and then eventually it goes into medicine. So if you, for example, if you get hurt, you're going to the hospital. If you get sick, you're going to the hospital or to the doctor for some medicine. So that is where we study well-being. The same well-being that I'm using, the same well-being that Sam Harris is referencing, Matt Dillahunty, Richard Dawkins, all of these guys. When they talk about well-being, they're talking about wellness of body and mind in the sense of what we would measure if someone was unwell in the body or unwell in the mind. We send them to where we have experts in the field of medical science. So yeah, if you value life instead of death and being healthy instead of sick, you should throw your lot in, which we all do, right? With the well-being model in medical science. When you get sick, or if you think a family member is unwell in their mind, where would you send them? Would you send them to your preacher? Or would you send them to the doctor to get an assessment and to maybe get some therapy or some psychological treatment or whatever the issue might be? If you send them to your preacher, I would say, okay, if you feel like you absolutely need to send them to your preacher, fine, send them to your preacher, but then make sure they go to the doctor, please. And I would also say send them to the doctor first, get the real thing, get the real treatment, and then send them to your preacher. And look, I'm not saying that the preacher cannot provide them, let's say if they're a Christian, provide them with some solace and some things to think about that might improve their mental, psychological well-being. Of course, that's the case. But I'm just saying, in for the most part, if your family members start saying like, I'm hearing voices, and what was that? Oh, look at what's going on up there. I'm painting a picture. Oh, I'm crossing the road right now. No, I'm actually sitting here with mine. Oh, and I'm playing the piano. I can't play the piano. Elton John is my boyfriend. If this is going on and it's not a comedic act, and there might be some schizophrenia or some things going on, having some kind of a bit of psychosis, you're gonna go get them professional help. That is what you should do. That is the right thing to do. That is the good thing to do, and that is what grounds my moral quest and my moral outlook. Yeah. What do you think of the trolley problem? Would you pull the lever, kill one person, and save the others, or just not intervene at all? Which option do you find moral ethically correct, and why? So in a situation like the trolley problem offers, so it's often offered without knowing anything about the people on the tracks. So without knowing anything, it becomes a matter of consequentialism of, I'm going to save three lives and let the one die, whether I have to pull the lever or not. That's with knowing nothing else. Feel free to add any other because at that point we're talking about the well-being of three unknown versus the well-being of one unknown. That's how I get to that conclusion. The only call you should give into is the call to say no to all that is immoral. Yeah. Well, and Kakis, a lot of people are not able to articulate or even understand what their moral calculus looks like. And let's say if they look to the Bible, for example, for moral calculus on contemporary issues, there might not be an answer for some kind of like, consent. What does it look like in a club setting, in like going out into a contemporary club when you're dancing with someone? When is it okay to put your hand on their lower back while dancing? Do you ask for consent? Do you use your senses to kind of go with it? What is right? What is wrong? Oh, I'm flipping through the Bible. It's not telling me when I can put my hand on her lower back. Like, there's a lot of right and wrong scenarios that you're not going to get out of there. But without access to a moral calculus, a lot of people are just kind of going with their feelings, and sometimes that gets people into trouble, right? Because their emotional knee-jerk reaction to situations, if it's not articulated or or they don't understand it, especially if it's being drowned by alcohol and all other kinds of complications, people act wrongfully and badly in these situations all the time. So it's not so easy to stamp out all that is immoral. We try to, it's like, oh, did I really have to, kill that wasp? Couldn't I have just let it outside? It's like, yeah, I could have. What was the more right thing to do? Was it more right to let the wasp outside by just opening the door or the window? Or does that wasp need to die? And why did I spend so much time trying to kill the wasp as opposed to trying to save the wasp? And maybe saving the wasp would have been a lot easier, even taking less energy. So Bailey Plays says, say happy birthday, Rory. Happy birthday, Rory. Film 7 says, greetings, glad to see you stream again. Welcome back, Film 7. Let's go. Nkakis says, no to, well, you say persons, I'll say people in the world will agree for the full 100%. So discussing is the first handout towards understanding and peace. You said peacer. I think you need peace. So yeah, I mean, any kind of pursuit of anything absolutely is a mistake. It just is a mistake. That's why my first maxim is a fallibilism maxim. Certainty is almost certainly unattainable, is my first maxim. This is the death of dogma, this maxim. For those of you who don't know what a maxim is, just look it up. A maxim is basically like a tenet to live by, a value, a virtue. It's like that. But my first maxim as a philosopher is certainty is almost certainly unattainable. So, meaning that if something is almost certainly unattainable, you best not waste energy trying to attain it. The goal, like in science, we're not trying to be certain about anything. We're just trying to improve on the models as we go. Any scientist that is like pursuing science to find something absolutely certain in reality, I think is making a mistake. And most scientists I've talked to kind of hold these attitudes. They're very like fuzzy attitudes of the sense, but then when you talk to them, like, but you understand that if we get a model like relativity locked in, like Einstein's relativity locked in, and we're like, yeah, this seems like it's going to be very hard to overturn or improve upon. Yeah, but that's different than saying, this is absolutely certainly the case, and it will never be changed. Like those are different things altogether. So get rid of the 100%, get rid of the certainty, get rid of the dogma in your life. Even if it's religious dogma that you grew up with, I'm just asking you, I'm not asking you to throw out your entire religion. That's a lot to ask. I'm asking you to at least have a little bit of fallibilism in there, in that some of this stuff might be incorrect at some level. And you can even as a Christian talk about it in the sense of like, human authors are fallible. So their interpretation of the divine inspiration that many people have faith in with regards to the writing of scriptures, they might have got some of that wrong. I just ask you to put that little grain of fallibilism into your religious thinking. Galia says, you're gay. No, I'm not gay. I wouldn't, and I don't take that as an insult. I just take that as a statement of fact that you're making, but the fact is incorrect. So far as I know, I'm not gay. I mean, maybe I am gay and I just haven't discovered that yet in my life. I know some people do discover that they are gay later on in life, but I mean, I have a wife. We're working on having kids right now, and I think most of the evidence so far suggests that I'm not gay. I've never really had any gay desires, homosexual desires. I don't think I have ever had any. And so, but it's possible you might be right, but possibility ought not weigh into our epistemological standards. So I would suggest, you might want to, and of course, you're probably saying it because you think it's funny or something like that, which is whatever. It's not that it's terribly unfunny. Kay Kakas says there is no racism or hate or war when people realize they all fear what they do not know. Yeah. I don't think most people fear what they don't know. I don't think the majority of human beings are that way. I think some are. Some are very scared of things they don't understand or they don't know. But I don't think most human beings are that way. I don't think I've ever been scared of something that I don't know or don't understand. I've always welcomed that. I think I don't know is one of the most beautiful states of mind to be in as a human being. Lawrence Krauss and I talked about this the last time I shared a stage with him in Vancouver. We talked about I don't know because it's a big part of, where is his book? Oh, it's buried. But Lawrence's new book, The Edge of Knowledge, is a beautiful book about where we are at with some of the biggest questions in physics, including the physics question of consciousness, because everything is a physics question. It just is. It all boils down to, okay, what is the physics of it then? What are the mechanics of this proposed system? So yeah, everything is physics. As a physicalist, that's what I believe. But Lawrence Krauss and I talked a lot about this idea of I don't know, and I think it just fills me with so much inspiration when I'm confronted with a question that I simply say, I don't know, but here's my best bet. That's usually what I do. When you hear me say, well, if I had to place a bet, it would be on this thing, but I don't know, man. Like, those are, I love that state of mind. This is how I feel about the what reality is at its most fundamental level. Now, if I had to place a bet, I would say that it is some kind of infinite state of potential. Infinite because I think it's more likely that at some level reality is infinite than at some level that something came from nothing. And I mean nothing absolutely. I think that's absurd. Now, and a lot of religious people would say, yeah, Travis, you're on to the right. You're on the right line here because that infinite thing is God. But I would say we don't have enough information to start claiming anything about that infinite state, only that there is a potential for something to happen from it. So we shouldn't say anything beyond that it's an infinite state of potential. That's the best way I've come up to describe this. Yeah, so there is no first cause, there's an infinite causer, is what I would say. And the only thing I would claim logically to know about that is that it would need to be infinite and it would need to have the potential to cause. So that's why I say infinite state of potential. So yeah, just to summarize, I don't think people necessarily fear what they don't know. I think that just some people do. Stupid fan says, have you not seen the videos of LGBT teachers getting fired? They are. Well, if any teacher is getting fired simply because they're gay or part of the LGBTQ plus community, I think that's disgusting. If that's the reason. Keikaka says, what has sexuality to do with children that have not reached puberty? Well, this is a very difficult topic. Now, this is one of the most emotionally charged topics I've ever spoken on, which is this idea of sex education for young people. People always ask, why the hell would we do this? Well, one of the main reasons why this is done, whether or not people can articulate this or not at that level, but one of the main reasons why this is done is that most sexual abuse happens in the home, right? Because a lot of people would say, leave that up to the parents to teach. First of all, some parents don't have the tools to teach that, or they won't teach that. And if it's done in the schools, then there's some kind of insurance that the children will learn the basics of what is not acceptable and what is not right if it's being done to them in the home. Now, this kind of thing, it needs to be done with the utmost due seriousness, because it is true that there are inappropriate things with regards to sex education to teach to very young children. So the question is, what should be taught? I am a really big fan of teaching very, very young children things that are not okay to be done to them or to happen to them, but be taught in a very friendly, non-intrusive way, which can be difficult. So the question is, where should that education come from? Well, and should we ensure it at the school level so that we ensure that they get some kind of education, so that if a child is being abused in any way by a sibling or by a parent, and again, this almost always is happening in the home, will the child know where to go and who to tell, and know that it's okay to tell? It's a very difficult topic because partly because so many people have experienced this, and also partly because parents are also worried about the teachers and the staff out there who might be trying to tell their children something that's going to infect their mind and like get them, get them thinking about things that they may not be ready to start thinking about. And look, and these feelings, like that feeling of protection is completely valid feeling. But I would suggest to people that when we're thinking about not just your own kids, but other people's kids, and we all have witnessed, well, most of us through some means, through media we consume or whatever, horrible parents who would never give certain pieces of education that are very important to their kids in the first place, like education on personal hygiene or nutrition, things that we will arrest you for or take your children away for. So yeah, and like I said, it is a topic that really fires people up. And it's because we're speaking about your children, the thing you would throw your own life on the line for without a question. But do try to think about those kids out there that have just completely inadequate parents, and also the kids out there that might be being abused in the home by their parents or their siblings or a family member. But have a thought about this topic. It's the answers are not easy. And like I said, from my perspective, from my moral perspective, well-being outcomes are what matters. So if you are causing a detriment to children's well-being through this sex education and teaching, I'm going to have a big problem with you. But if you're, and also on the other hand, if you're causing a detriment to children's well-being, whether it's your own or other children's well-being, by denying them necessary education so that they can protect themselves from predators in the home, then I'm going to have a problem with you too. So it's a balance, and it's a very aggravating balance between those two things. Not an easy topic. It gets me fueled up even thinking about it, because we're, of course, dealing with areas of human depravity that are unimaginable, and that will fill most people with a passionate fury to want to protect against. Now, a lot of people always go to the position of like, oh, I'm going to protect by killing them when I see them, which I don't agree with, but you cannot identify this stuff while it's happening if the children don't know that it's wrong. And that happens through education. And if they're not getting education in the home, it's got to come from somewhere. And I think that's why many governments have some levels of sex education for young kids, to try to outline the things that are inappropriate, even if it's happening to them from their own parents or from their siblings or whoever in their own home. Very difficult topic. Glossable says, why Western countries lecture other countries about morality, environment, pollution, etc., when they are top all from past, for example, in carbon pollution. Okay. Yeah, you don't like hypocrisy. I don't like hypocrisy either. But you can lecture and still be right, even if you are acting unrighteously, right? So if someone's a chronic, hardcore, heroin addict, and they're giving a speech to kids or to people, and they're talking about, stay away from heroin, man. One might say the same thing, like, it's like, why don't you look at your own life? Well, maybe they have, and they're working on it, right? Just like the West. Maybe they have looked at their own governance and they're working on it. But that doesn't mean that the information they're saying, the thing that they're lecturing about, is incorrect. The Blue Baron says, can you breed humans and monkeys? Is that a sin? Well, I don't think anything's a sin. I don't use sin. I prefer words like right or wrong or good or bad, the words that we use in philosophical ethics or the philosophy of ethics. Can you breed humans and monkeys? I don't have any moral objection to breeding humans and monkeys if we eventually have, so long as this isn't caused, so long as we aren't breeding entities into some kind of like guaranteed, overwhelming amounts of suffering with no way to thrive from a well-being perspective, then I have a problem with that. That's actually a really good question. I like that question because it's, it starts getting into other animals, the ethics of how we treat other animals. And I've talked about this a lot in the sense that I think, to speak descriptively, I think what we currently do with regards to other animals is one man's pet cow that they named Arby, which, by the way, when I was growing up, we had a pet cow named Arby that we treated basically like a dog. And for those of you who don't know, there's a fast food chain that serves like sliced beef and stuff called Arby's in Canada. I don't know if you guys have it in the States or wherever else, but it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke to name our cow Arby. And we eventually did butcher it one day and eat Arby, but it was also our pet. So we had a relationship while it was in that state of being like our dog. And it was growing up. We would ride it with our hockey equipment, like ride it like a horse, and it would enjoy it. It would play with us. It was just a very interesting experience to have a pet like that. And then it came time that our relationship morally with that animal became that of, okay, now we are going to use this animal to help the well-being of our family thrive. So we go from pet, who we loved and adored, treated like a family dog, and living in the culture that I lived in. The next thing was that now it's time for Arby to be butchered, and we're going to eat him. This really does shine a light on how nature, how culture influences what we allow to come out of our nature. Now, a question for the chat would be, do you think it was wrong to eat Arby under that circumstance? Do you think it was wrong to have Arby? Yeah. Do you think it was wrong to have Arby as the pet and then eventually eat Arby? Do you think it should have been one way or the other? Don't treat it like a pet. Don't treat the cow like a pet. Then butcher it like someone would do in like a open grazing type of farm, because that's what Arby would have been. It was the only cow that we had, so it would have just been grazing openly. It had a salt block that it would lick on, and it would get its water and grain and different things that cows love. Because I know that there's some people out there that are all for like ethical farming in that way, and then there's people that are completely against killing animals for sustenance at all. So what do you guys think about that scenario? That is a true scenario that I grew up with. Maybe I'll have to put this out as a new like philosophical question, the Arby scenario. Maybe it's a new ethical dilemma for the veganism, meat eater, hunter, gatherer, farming conversation. But what is the right thing? What should Arby's fate be in this situation? We know what Arby's fate was descriptively, but what should have been Arby's fate? Yeah, I'll leave that one there for you guys. Dan Y says, what is love? Wow. I wish, you know, love is simply going to be deemed so by the conceptualizer. There are as many different versions of love as there are different versions of art. Someone can look at something and say, that's love. And I'll say, no, it's not. And they'll say, prove it. And then I might give them some criteria for what love is and how that thing didn't meet that criteria. And they'll say, that's not what I think love is. So love is one of these terms that it's really hard to pin down unless we can agree on some of the criteria. Now, someone could say, based on what the dictionary says, it's this. Sure, we can all agree on what the dictionary says. But is that what our experience says? Is that what we would be truly okay with calling love? I think for me personally, I think love is just this overwhelming feeling of affection, a feeling of affection that transcends your feelings of affection that, you would normally just say, like, I really like, here, I really like this little bust of William Shakespeare. But I love Shakespeare. I really like this little bust of Shakespeare, but I desperately really love Shakespeare. Well, what's the difference? This bust is like a cool representation of that thing, of what Shakespeare is and who Shakespeare was and his literature and how he changed the zeitgeist of humanity, and he's always around us. Everywhere you look in every book, you'll find Shakespeare. There's no escaping Shakespeare. That's why I honestly think Shakespeare is the most influential human being that's ever walked this planet. Some people would say like Jesus, if Jesus walked, or Muhammad. But I would say for me, it's Shakespeare. You'll find him in everything. If you bethink yourself of any crime unreconciled is yet to heaven and grace, solicit for it straight. I will live in thy heart, die in thy lap, and be buried in thy eyes. I have that tattooed on my arm, by the way. Right there. I will live in thy heart, die in thy lap, and be buried in thy eyes. Actually, that's my full tattoo on the right side of my arm. Got the Milky Way galaxy up here. We got an anchor here. We got a black hole in the middle. And we got a star map. We have William Shakespeare. And then we have my piano right there. Little show and tell. Yeah. It's just, love is just an amount when your affection for something comes to a level where you feel as though that's not enough to describe your affection, simply liking something. It's like your affection is beyond that. It transcends it. So then we say love. Hey, genius. Name one famous scientist besides Hawking that was atheist. Well, let's do a quick Google search. Famous atheist scientists. So if you go to the wiki, you're going to find Scott Aronson, American theoretical computer scientist and professor. His primary area of research was quantum computing. Ernst Abe. Let's see. There's a long list here. Peter Atkins, Scott Atran, Atran. Yeah, dude, the list is too long. Like, I guess we could say most famous, Herbert Hauptman, American mathematician, along with Jeremy Coyle, was a Nobel Prize in chemistry in 1985. Stephen Hawking, yeah, of course, you already said that. Yeah, so if you just do a Google search, there's tons of famous atheists. But what does making them famous matter to you in whatever assessment you're making? Like fame is not necessarily a good metric to measure goodness or whether someone's right or wrong or by any standard. So I mean, also like famous scientists that I've worked with, like, do you not think Richard Dawkins is a scientist? I mean, I know Richard. I've worked with Richard a lot. Sam Harris is a famous scientist. You might say he's more of a philosopher, but he's a neuroscientist. Lawrence Krauss, and all of these guys who have popularized. Neil deGrasse Tyson is an atheist. He doesn't like the atheist label, but he's still an atheist. Neil deGrasse Tyson doesn't like the atheist label because he's uneducated on the philosophy that underpins atheism and Gnosticism and agnosticism. He doesn't understand it. He's demonstrated that in time and time again in many different lectures and videos. He doesn't understand what atheism is. He thinks atheism is a culture, and it's not. It's literally what he is. So yeah, there's tons. Danny says, I'm an atheist. Yeah. Yuri Davis says, not everyone agrees that life is preferential to death. In a purely evolutionary word, this may not be true. Yeah, it is true that there are people who are agnostic to the idea that life is preferential to death. Now, people who think that death is preferential to life, those people tend, if they truly believe that, if they embody it in their life, like I'm saying, like we act out our beliefs. If you truly believe that death is preferential to life, those people tend not to be here very much longer, and it's sad. And I know people like that. And what you're saying is very true. Not everyone agrees. And I, for people who are really getting close to the edge of starting to be convinced that death is preferential to life, I usually just try to deliver to them fallibilism in a way that will at least allow them to hold on to agnosticism, an agnostic position with regards to whether life is preferential to death or not. And, even if they are living agnostically to that, they can still, enjoy some of the pleasures that the world has to offer while they are still here, so long as I see that they are thriving from a well-being perspective. And if they're not, like due to mental health issues or whatever, I will try anything I can to help them, including financially, helping find them necessary doctoral care that they need, or hospitalization, whatever it takes. William says, what are the boundaries then of your moral actions if doing harm to others will provide wellness to you? So that's a good question. I talked a little bit earlier about calls to war. Obviously, there are situations where I would think that a war is righteous from a well-being preservation perspective. Those are less common, of course, but never would I justify as good needing to do harm to another to protect or provide wellness for myself. So I talk about this in the sense of self-defense. If someone was trying to attack my family or myself, I would try to defend myself in a way that did the least harm to their well-being. And this is I disagree so much with how many people from the United States of America feel about this, where it's like, nope, if they attack me, I'm putting a bullet in them because I don't know if they're holding a weapon that they might kill me. It's like, I don't feel that way. I've had to defend myself from people who have attacked me before. And yes, I've thrown a couple punches, but they weren't my full head of steam. And I didn't want to, it's never my intention while defending myself or defending others against someone. And I've used the example of a shooter. Like, here's another example. Let's throw guns into the mix. Let's say an active shooter. Let's say I have access to a firearm, and an active shooter is coming towards a grocery store that I happen to be in, and I have access to a firearm. What am I going to do as a moral well-beingist? Well, it's not that I all of a sudden don't care about the well-being of the active shooter anymore, but I understand that they are in a position where they seem to be actively seeking to destroy others or act antithetically towards others' well-being. So a perfect scenario would be for me to be able to cause them to drop their weapon and not harm anybody. But if I had clear sights on them and they were seeming like they were going to start shooting at people, I would have to put some bullets in them in order to diffuse the threat. I don't think it's good that I had to do that from a well-being perspective. I don't think it's good. None of this scenario is good. But sometimes, like with the call to war, you have to be ready to preserve the well-being of others against threats to their well-being. And sometimes those threats will come from human beings. So yeah, I might have to kill that person. And I don't think it's good that I do. But necessary to protect others from that threat to their well-being. So yeah, and I think that everyone should think through this. If you are a moral well-beingist, or if you're a moral agent at all, you should think about the rightness and wrongness and the goodness and badness of these kinds of scenarios. Not because you might be in them, because that's almost certainly not going to happen. But just so that you can better understand your moral underpinnings and what your sentiments are giving rise to with regard to your moral attitudes. But never would I ever think it's good or would I ever harm somebody else's wellness or their well-being simply to make myself feel better. It's not, that's a violation of my moral standard. I would be the bad actor, the one I described as the shooter. I would be the shooter in that scenario. Alexandra, I have read, and I mean, I've done I think I've done the audiobook of Maps of Meaning, of Peterson's Maps of Meaning. And I've also done some citations and some reading of the chapters and done some study, but a very long time ago. But I would be happy to discuss any of those concepts. Yes. Danny says, Yuri, come on, dude, be real. Choosing death over life is nonsensical. No, not necessarily, Danny. It's not necessarily nonsensical, right? There are sense-making scenarios that make sense to me where someone would choose death over life. People who know that they are going to lose brain function due to a cancer that is incurable over the next, let's say, couple months. They have picked the date that they want to be given an assisted suicide, or there's a better word for that, medically assisted death. And And I think that's perfectly reasonable. And I wouldn't be opposed to doing that myself if I find myself in similar situations to that hypothetical. So I don't think I don't think choosing death is always going to be over life, is always going to be nonsensical. I think we can make sense of that. And it's not that it's good. This is another thing, right? People always ask me, then they're like, well, you would be absolutely against any of this, assisted death. No, it's not that I would be against it, but I think it's bad that people need to lose their life in that way. But sometimes they need to, based on their own sentimentality. The pain is too much. Like for all of these reasons, the levels of well-being in their life have gotten so low and the outcome is so egregious and terrible that it makes sense to them from, even if they're a moral well-beingist, that what's best in this situation is for me to conserve and maximize well-being for myself as much as I can, which would include choosing my date of death and the way I want to go out. It's not outside the purview of a moral well-beingist to make that decision. I asked a question earlier. Feel free to get your guys' guesses in. So how much money do you think it costs to produce the next event that we have coming up, the event between Dinesh D'Souza and Alex O'Connor? How much money do you think it costs to put an event on stage like that in front of an audience, have it filmed in 4K and produced for you guys in a professional way? Let me know your guesses as to how much you think it costs. I will tell you that some people, I put out this poll question to people about the Peterson Sam Harris series, how much money it costs to produce those events, and people's guesses were like really underwhelming. They were like $10,000 for the 4 events, or like $20,000, $50,000. Some people guessed. Some people were getting closer when they started saying $100,000, $200,000. But those 4 events to produce cost over $1 million. Over $1 million. I'm not going to get into how that money was split up and broken up and what was the most cost-worthy thing. But always, one thing I will say, always when you're producing the events, well, almost always, when they're events of this caliber, the speaking fees are going to be the most important element of the most expensive element, of the events. So let me know what you guys think Dinesh D'Souza versus Alex O'Connor is going to cost Pangburn to produce. Pangburn meaning not just me, but the company. What do you guys think? And then I'll give you guys an answer at the end of this video. Yes, John Boy, thank you for the link. Guys, join us on Discord. We have a lot of fun on Discord. We have conversations like this. You can converse, video chat, or just in audio with me on Discord, and I'm on our Discord server frequently, so feel free to join us. Film 7 says, certainty is almost certainly unattainable a derivative maxim from Nietzsche's idea of perspectivism? I don't think so. Perspectivism is going to be there's a lot more involved in that than simply just stating a maxim. So do we want to go through that? I would rather reference the Wikipedia than, see, this is like, okay, perspectivism is the epistemological principle that perception of and knowledge as something are always bound to the interpretive perspectives of those observing it. So in a sense, like if you just do that reading of it, then you can draw some lines. I would say it's more like perspectivism and fallibilism. It's like perspectivism is a descriptive claim. Fallibilism is a prescriptive claim. So perspectivism is more of a description of what is. So it's a description and not a prescription. So I think that's where you get into a bit of the differences. But yeah, and let's see. Yeah, and Nietzsche just goes on to provide some examples of to demonstrate how we are all, engaging in perspectivism, which, it's a good way to describe human nature, I would say. Can you say "sweet" for Ronaldo? No. Oh shit! I just said it, and then I said shit. So that means this video is going to be unmonetized. Fudge. Well, I can say fuck now because it's. Yo boy Allah says worst kind of child abuse is not socializing your child. No, that is not the worst kind of child abuse. There are many more worse forms of child abuse on offer than not socializing your child. I think not socializing your child is a big problem. But of course, sexual abuse of children, physical, emotional, all kinds of different abuses are much worse than not socializing your child. Ryan M says children need discipline and education. Both must be strong and both require diligence on the part of the child and adult. I agree with that. So long as by discipline you do not mean physical or emotional abuse, psychological abuse of any kind. If you do mean that, you really need to look at our best, new, most up-to-date clinical psychological, child psychological models of what abuse of any kind does to the brain and development of a child. From Doors to Dawes says, what do you think about kids and the Santa Claus dogma? Very interesting. So Santa Claus comes with a lot of fun, but also potentially some fear and threats, right? Some parents can treat Santa Claus very lightheartedly. Like, remember, Santa Claus is coming, and you want to be good before, so you get a present. It's like, yeah, there's something lighthearted and fun about that, and a child might be good for the sake of that, but I think it's not really going to achieve much of anything to make threats of like not receiving presents, because like I think the kids know that they're going to get the presents. Like kids aren't as stupid as we think they are. But I don't think I think the Santa Claus thing should be taken with a huge grain of salt and not taken too seriously if you're going to do the Santa Claus thing. And I actually think with my kids, I probably will do the Santa Claus thing. I think it's a fun fantasy fiction thing, but it won't be done in a way like if my kids are like, if my kids are like, is Santa Claus real? And I'm going to explain to them that Santa Claus is like a metaphorical truth. It's kind of like a useful fiction. So it's real in a sense. And I will talk to them about it, and use it as an opportunity. And there's going to be a lot of new words coming out of that, but it's also a good opportunity to teach the kid about something. And some people will be like, oh, they're going to be so brokenhearted if they find out that Santa Claus, is just a metaphor for something different than, or a myth. It's like, yeah, but they're going to be fine the next day. Like I don't think most kids are going to be so overwhelmingly distraught if they find out that Santa Claus was actually mommy and daddy, or daddy and mommy putting presents under the tree and labeling them from Santa. I think it's just a bit of fun and fantasy. If a child starts taking it too seriously and being like, but Santa's going to do this to me if I don't do something, then it's time to have a conversation with them about Santa Claus. But yeah, anyone who's really like using Santa Claus as some authority figure, like they would God, and say, well, do it or Santa's taking your presents away, something like that. I think that's a form, that's kind of a form of psychological abuse. Don't do that. Ryan M says sex ed for children is a delicate topic, but it's vital. True. Why deny young people the knowledge of their own bodies, drives, and urges? True. it may be a difficult subject in the home, yet easier at school. True. But like I said, this has to be done in a way that does not cause a detriment to the child's well-being in any way. So yeah, it's got to be taken with due seriousness. I think you outlined that when you say it's a delicate topic, but I think it is, if you really are passionate about putting a stop to child abuse in the home, we got to have an outside source offering some forms of education taught delicately to children so that they can defend themselves against abuse if it is happening in the home. Yo boy Allah says, if I had to judge eating animals, I would have to judge existence. Arby had better life being treated as a pet. Yeah, I tend to think the same way. Like when I think of the Arby scenario, I think we gave Arby a really good life. He was a lot of fun. He was just like a dog, and then eventually he became food. And I know certain parts of the world actually have relationships with dogs like this. Some dogs they eat and some dogs they have as pets. So I think I don't see wrongness in what I experienced based on my current moral standards. In the Arby scenario that I outlined. And I don't feel traumatized by it. I don't feel, but I can see, here's an interesting scenario to add to this. Imagine your child felt very strongly that cow should never be eaten, should never be killed because all animals deserve to live. And do you think if that was the case, like let's say if one of my brothers had that attitude towards Arby, if that was the case, would it be a crime against that child's well-being to butcher that cow and serve it for dinner? Now we're getting into some interesting moral territory. Someone's very adamant about me touching grass. Go touch grass. Go touch grass. Go touch grass, bro. Chill. Go touch grass. No one cares. Film 7 says I care. This person's just spamming the chat. Life is beautiful. Don't make it complicated. Well, I mean, if you throw yourself into the human condition and engage in analytical philosophy, life is complicated. If you choose to analyze it, you don't have to. Some people choose to live in an ignorant bliss of the world, like they don't want to know things like physics seems to indicate that we don't have free will. They don't want to know things like that. They don't want to know about, let's say, a certain spider that, likes to burrow itself inside your mouth when you sleep. Like these are the things people like don't want to. They want to be ignorant to this, but I'm not like that. Like I want to understand the onion layers that we have peeled back throughout human history and what other onion layers we are anticipating as we build stronger instruments to continue to analyze further down the logarithmic scale. So yeah. Okay, we got a guess of 500,000. As real as it gets, boxing says, how can there be an afterlife when the only experience we know is our brain? It's a very good point. I think ideas of the afterlife are a response to death anxiety. I agree with Freud on that. That was a very Freudian thing, very strong idea from Freud that, okay, well, why this cultural emergence around the planet in different cultures that didn't have contact with one another? Why was there emergence of claims of afterlife? I think it is very soothing to people who suffer from a real existential dread due to death anxiety, due to their knowledge that they will inevitably die in some way, and that they probably won't be happy that they are dying, happy with the fact that they are dying when they are dying. They're probably not going to be okay with it. They probably don't want it to happen. It's going to be something that feels like it's just a violation of everything they are because it's killing you. You're dying. So death anxiety is a real phenomenon. I remember feeling death anxiety when I was young, like really young, when I first heard about death, because I was worried about something happening to my family members and my loved ones. I didn't want that to happen. Death anxiety, real phenomena. One answer to it is to say that, here's a message from the entity that created us. And there is actually a heaven. There is a place waiting for us when our inevitable death meets us. And for some people, I think that really sells a lot of people on putting their faith in certain religions that offer this. It's a big selling feature, and maybe the strongest selling feature. And I think our death anxiety really, really would be a strong internal argument for us to adopt such a belief for that reason. Yeah, IFS Belaran says, like closed in a room, not socializing seems pretty bad. Yeah, definitely that. Well, you're talking about kind of imprisonment, like child imprisonment. Imprisonment is obviously horrible, but I would still argue that there are even more horrible, like what goes along with that imprisonment, more horrible things on top of that. So Katab, I see you have a lot to write. Try to think a little bit more, collect your ideas, and write something a little more coherent for a question. Actually, you guys, Katab is outlining what I would consider to be bad faith and unhelpfulness. That the physics that holds the Pangburn universe together are good faith and unhelpfulness. So Katab is giving an example of being insincere with his intentions when he says he's yapping about useless things. Do you honestly believe that he thinks that like human ethics is useless, like matters of right and wrong, and basically talking about any of the ideas, matters of free will, determinism, ideas about like providing greater levels of safety to children in the home who might be being abused? Do you really think that Katab thinks that those are useless things? Or is Katab being insincere with his intentions? I think at this point, he has not met my minimum requirements for a fruitful dialectic by being bad faith and unhelpful. Unhelpful being the spamming part, like the spamming, I'm not a bot, LOL, like that's unhelpful, right? So Katab, you haven't met the minimum requirements for my fruitful dialectic. Feel free to drop in a question that's that you've thought about, that you sincerely want to know the answer to, or engage with me on, and do it in a helpful way. Jason says, "Nah, I told my kids Santa wasn't real when they were 4 years old. What a stupid myth." Yeah, I mean that's also one approach. I'm not opposed to that either. I don't think it's necessarily a stupid myth. There's some, I think there's some fun pageantry to it. Gift giving is typically fun. Most human beings enjoy the feeling of giving a gift to another, and it is kind of part of a gift giving culture. the whole not list naughty and nice thing. I don't think that's in the original The Night Before Christmas. I don't think the list is in that. It's definitely in songs and different things, but yeah, it's interesting that we're talking about examining the doctrine. Maybe this Christmas, actually, I'll do a deep dive into the Santa myth, and we'll examine particular doctrines. That might be fun. But yeah, I get it. I get why some people would think it's a stupid myth as well. But not all myths are stupid. Surely you enjoy some myths more than others, and maybe there are myths that you think are not stupid. But yeah, I don't think I would call the Santa myth stupid, but I get your point. Ryan says, thank you for the discussion and reflecting on my comments. Well, thank you, Ryan. I hope you guys drop a like. It's a lot of fun coming on here and shooting the shit with you guys. It's a good time for me. So. Yeah, Benjamin, are you familiar with the modal version of the cosmological argument for the existence of God? The one that states that all contingent things must stem from a necessary thing, which we call God. Yeah, my problem with that is that I'm fine with that, the essence of that idea, but the fact that it's called God is the problem for me. I would call it, well, my logic would tell me that at the least it must be infinite, which I think the cosmological argument would agree with. It must eternal, right? State that allows for something to happen. That's why I say potential. But the potential, it has potentiality. I just have a problem with them slotting God in there, because there's nothing that tells us that God necessarily needs to be there, or any kind of God, or anything we would call God. Now, someone might say that God is the infinite state of potential. Then they just agree with me and they're calling it something else. But I think most people mean something different by God when they slot that in there. So, yeah. I don't think it's a horrible conclusion, absent the fact that God is the answer given. So it's a God smuggling into a zone that I would actually place my bet on it being an infinite state of potential, not needing to graft on any other attributes, because we just don't know correspondingly. But I would say logic does lead us better to there being a state of something infinite, as opposed to something coming from nothing initially. What up, Mark? Welcome. As Real As It Gets Boxing says, thanks for answering. Anxiety for me falls within the non-factual state of understanding existence, where I think there is more experience in life when you seek the truth, not soothing feelings. Yeah, I get the sentiment of what you're saying there, as Real As It Gets Boxing. I would suggest that everything you think about truth is born of your sentiments, is born of your feelings. For example, the feeling that you don't want your feelings to dictate what's true is a feeling, is a sentiment born of you. And this will ultimately lead you to things like valuing the scientific method. You value the scientific method because it seems right to you. Your seemings are coming from your sentiments, your feelings. That doesn't mean that they're wrong or anything, but I think it's ultimately these choices, to speak outside of the realm of determinism, but these choices your body makes, I think, are sentimental. And But then, of course, we get to competing versions of epistemology and, of course, correspondence criteria of truth, which leads us to have this beautiful scientific method that gives us a really intricate understanding of many of the objects in reality and how they function. A lot of unfalsifiable theories that we have are beautiful working models of how the world works and how reality functions. We don't have all the answers, and all these models are subject to update, but it's a beautiful thing. Oh, a little bit of a stretch. We've been going for 2 hours, rapid fire. This is excellent, though, guys. Please drop a like if you're enjoying this. I see we have 92 in the room. Smash that like button as hard as you can. Really helps out the stream. I am here to promote our next big discussion. Alex O'Connor versus Dinesh D'Souza, June 1st. It's going to be freely available to you guys. If you love having access to freely available intellectual discourse that's happening live on stage in front of an audience, hit that like button. It takes a lot of resources to do this. Okay, I asked you all right off the bat what you think it would cost to produce this next event between Alex O'Connor and Dinesh D'Souza, and we got some really good answers. Some people said $20,000 US. Some people said 30,000. Some people said 5,000. Another person said 80,000. Another person said $500,000. The answer for this next event, it costs $50,000 USD to produce. So you guys are getting access to a $50,000 event free. I simply ask that you help us promote this event. It really helps with the health of what we do here at Pangburn to bring you guys new discussions. So hitting the like button on this stream really helps. Sharing the poster around. If you're in the New York area, if you can come out and support the event, that would be awesome too. But yeah, we're really looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, the topic is the Bible true? Oh. Kitab says, what is the purpose of life according to you? Well, I think we all form our own purposes, ultimately. And these will be born of our sentiments, like I was saying before. But for me, my purpose in life is to maximize well-being for myself and those around me. Thriving instead of simply surviving. And like I outlined earlier, well-being is my moral metric. So that is a pursuit I think is good and right in this world, to maximize well-being for yourself and those around me. And well-being, in the way I use it, means wellness of body and mind. So I'm actively trying to maximize wellness of body and mind for myself and those around me. That's my ultimate moral quest in life. And I do that in many ways. I do a lot of giving to charity. I go out and do charity work myself. Actually, you can find videos on this channel where I advertise some of our giving efforts so that it helps to get people more involved in that. People give money when they see the videos in support of our next endeavors to give money to give food to those in need. So a lot of things like that. I help many members of the Pangburn community financially, philosophically, epistemologically, in any ways that I can. I try to inspire as many people as I can in my life to seek new feats of well-being, thriving in their life. So that's what my life is all about, and it just charges me out of bed every morning, and I love every second of it. I truly do. It doesn't make me rich financially. It makes me rich internally. It makes me feel like I can lift a dump truck when I'm doing this. I also do suffer from clinical depression, and it also really helps with that on top of the medication I take and some cannabis usage as well. But the purpose itself is the thing that really transcends me to a new level to be productive to my moral quest. And I just love every second of it. And that's what the purpose of life is to me. But And I hope that inspires other people to think about their purposes as well. There are many, many worthwhile, worthy purposes out there on offer. Whether they're inside within the confounds of a religion or not, I don't think you need a religion to do this. But I think engaging with your empathy drive, allowing yourself to go out there and feel those charges and hits to your system of empathy, man, there's nothing like it. That is my ultimate. That feeling is something I chase constantly, that feeling of giving to others, doing something that's going to be long lasting and providing wellness of mind and body to people. Like some of the live events I've produced, I see a lot of people write in and say that, I saw your series that you produced between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson that has provided this journey for me, or this pathway in my life. And it was something that Sam or Jordan said at this moment at your event that really paved the way. And this is what I'm doing now. Like, that stuff is really cool. And I want to do as many of these great works as I can before my time is up and the worms get to feast upon my ass. So that's, I love it. I love all of it. And these are the kinds of values I will embody for my children, and my children can choose to be like dad or not. I will not enforce any kind of dogmas on my children. They might choose to be Christian. They might choose to be Muslim. I will, of course, if they are interested in having intellectual discussions about that with them, I will engage with them in good faith in a helpful way during those discussions. But there will be no love lost, just like there's no love lost on anyone in the world for me if they hold ideas that I detest or even think are incorrect. I'm going to do a jump quickly to someone just said, from doors to Dawes, thank you so much for the super chat. I deeply appreciate it. I'm going to give it a little heart there. That's £5 super chat, €5, pounds, euro. It says, thanks, buddy. I've thoroughly enjoyed your answers. Thank you very much for being here from doors to Dawes, and I deeply appreciate the super chat. Thank you very much. As real as it gets, Boxing says, wow, your knowledge is admirable, so interesting. Can't wait to learn these things you mentioned. Thank you. I appreciate the compliment. As real as it gets says, can't wait for the Bible topic. Yeah, I mean, Dinesh D'Souza versus Alex O'Connor on the Bible. Alex is no slouch on the Bible. I think we all know that at this point. And Dinesh D'Souza is tries to be a living embodiment of what's in the Bible. So this is going to be this just might be the most viewed epic showdown between two intellectuals that I've ever produced. I know Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, that series was just, kind of like culture altering for a lot of people. But also Dillahunty versus Peterson. But yeah, Alex O'Connor, as many of you know, is growing rapidly, and he's appealing to, I think, not only a university age demographic, but I think there are a lot of younger people interested in the way he is forming his arguments and the work he is doing. So, and I think his YouTube popularity is a testament to that. So, both of those guys are going to be ready to rock and roll, and I'm going to be there for every second of it. I'll be doing the opening address, and then I'll be sitting at the play-by-play booth, which we will be, after the event, I will be sitting there with fellow broadcasters Don Prager, and I'm hoping John J. Parker can make it. I'm going to still twist his arm so that he can be there. If not, we will have someone else there with us that's of more the Christian persuasion. Which will be good to get their analysis as well. Kitab says, I appreciate your purpose and efforts. May God bless you. Well, thank you for the sentiments. I appreciate that. Enrique, says, do you think there is a one-to-one correspondence between reality and mathematical physical law? Well, this is interesting because then we start talking about the noumena, right? Those of you who are familiar with the noumena. Do I think there's a one-to-one correspondence between reality and mathematical physical laws? I think it's possible for us to achieve that. I'm not convinced that we have. I'm not sure what would convince me that we are engaging with the noumena. That is the true underbelly of what everything is. I'm not sure that our sense-making apparatus gives us access to that. It very well might. I'm very fallibilistic with regards to that question. One thing I will say about the correspondence between reality and physical laws is that what we are doing right now through the scientific method seems to be working enough for us to develop incredible things. Some dangerous things, like thermonuclear warheads, which the United States has 5,400 of them at this moment, which a thermonuclear warhead has 1,000 times the power of what was dropped on Nagasaki in 1945. So imagine that destructive power. But this is all done because we have come to understand the objects in reality and how they function at such a level that, 100 years ago, people would laugh at us if we were to say such things. And what's going on in medicine right now with mRNA technology and a lot of different things that are happening in technological development and efficiency. All of these things are just mind-blowing, and AI is coming along. All of these amazing things work because we are at least understanding physical reality enough to play with the objects and be able to predict what they're going to do. If we weren't able to do that, we couldn't play. So whether that's a one-to-one correspondence, I don't know. And I think that there's this idea that science is filled with all these naive realists, people that would say, yes, of course we are. But I don't think science is filled with those people who hold those naive realist attitudes towards your question, Enrique. I think science is more filled with anti-realists who aren't convinced, or are maybe convinced that we are not necessarily touching the noumena, or what's actually there at the foundation. I think if it's true that reality is sitting on this infinite potential, that seems to mean that as we pull these onion layers back of reality and discover more and more and more, keep pulling the layers back, that there's not necessarily a bottom to that process, which shouldn't discourage us. This is just like discovering that we may in fact not have any level of free will whatsoever. This should not discourage us. If it's true that we are living in this useful fiction of free will, and it's really not the case, and really things are determined, which I think is the most accurate thing most accurate conclusion based on what we know about physics, don't let it discourage us. Just continue on playing in this useful fiction, because ultimately what's useful to us in our purposes is what should matter at the end of the day, when we put our arm around our wives or our husbands, our loved ones, and we watch our favorite show on Netflix. How much does it really matter if we are engaging in a useful fiction or not, if we are surrounded by the good feelings of love and care? I think the latter trumps all of the other stuff. Antonio says, is this an atheist channel or Christian channel? Neither. Pangburn, the channel itself, is a platform for good faith, helpful discussions. And often when I produce those discussions, they happen on stage in front of an audience. But there is no political or religious goal there. I happen to be an atheist, but that is separate from what I'm trying to do with Pangburn. Rubmar says, shut up. Nah, I'm good. And there's another example of what I would consider unhelpfulness when we're talking about the thing that holds Pangburn together are the laws of good faith and helpfulness. That would be something that, someone's just like, shut up. That would be something I would consider unhelpful. JC says, does religion separate people? Not necessarily. There are people that practice religion in a non-separatist way. And I think that's good from my perspective, from a human well-being perspective. I think separating people ideologically like that is a grounds for lack of opportunity for well-being to thrive, and a lot of detriments come from that through that separation method. And sometimes war and conflict like that. Ooh, yeah, Donald Hoffman came on our channel recently, Gary. It's under our live tab on our channel. You can scroll down, you'll find Donald Hoffman. I have to try to remember. I think Donald Hoffman thinks that reality is mind dependent. And if I'm right about that, I don't want to misconstrue or strawman his position, but if he thinks reality is mind dependent, I think he's wrong about that. I think the objects in reality and what we understand about them and our history and everything, the earth was here before there was any mind to conceive it. I think that's the reality we live in. And he might say, well, God might be the ultimate mind that conceived of it, but I don't see any good reason to believe that. So if that's Donald Hoffman, then that would be my response. And the same, like Deepak Chopra thinks reality is mind dependent, and I would say reality is mind independent. Okay, guys, thank you for all the questions today. That's 2 hours and 20 minutes of rapid fire questions. That's probably enough for my brain for until at least I get a bit of a rest. But thank you so much for coming in. Please drop a like on this stream. It helps really get the message out there about our next event and some of my thoughts on different issues. So please drop a like before you leave. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream, and and please help us spread the word about our next big event in New York City, June 1st, Alex O'Connor versus Dinesh D'Souza. It's going to be the next heavyweight bout at Pangburn, and I hope you guys enjoy. And I'll be live usually around this time every day from here until June 1st. I'm going to try to be answering all of your guys' questions. So feel free to stop by again. And as always, let art and science inspire.